Good afternoon and welcome. Please take your seats. As you can see, we have a large crowd today. Welcome to the Economic Club of Florida's 560th meeting in our series. Is it better now? All right. Can you hear me in the back all right now? All right. I'll use my outdoors voice. Welcome to the Economic Club of Florida's 560th meeting in our series of distinguished speaker programs. My name is Lo Bealby. I have the privilege of serving as your president this year. Please silence your cell phones so that our program is not interrupted, and I call this meeting to order. Please stand and say with me the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. Welcome, everyone. We have an exciting program for you today. As you know, our speaker is Freddie Figgers. He will be more formally introduced in a moment, but I wanted to talk about a few of the logistics first. As you can see, there's no head table. For those of you that come to our regular meeting, you might be saying, good, but the reason we don't have a head table is because we're going to have a fireside chat style interview of Mr. Figgers. Our very own Economic Club Vice President, Marion Hoffman, who will also be introduced in a moment, will be interviewing and discussing topics with Freddie Figgers. We have a special sponsor today. Our sponsor today is Indelible Business Solutions. Indelible is represented today by Jamal Soul, former Florida Secretary of Commerce, and now the president of Business Solutions for Indelible. Jamal is here with his wife, Karen. Welcome, Karen and Jamal. He will be more formally introduced in a moment. If you've not done so recently, please be sure to visit the Economic Club of Florida's website. We continually make improvements to it. Each time I go, I see new things, and I'm pleased to report that you can find links to the club's YouTube page for video recordings, and you can listen to our past speaker programs on our podcast page. Sometimes when I walk in the evenings, I listen to prior speakers. I listen from my own voice, of course, but I listen to the speakers. You'll find the Economic Club of Florida on LinkedIn for those of you who are on LinkedIn, and you will see updates on Twitter and in your local media. Our next program, I'm pleased to announce that our next program will be on Thursday, September 29. The meeting will be at FSU Dunlap Champions Club, the old UCC. It will not be here. It'll be over at the FSU alumni area over there, but now called the Dunlap Champions Club. There'll be signs that direct you where to go. I'm pleased to announce that our speaker in September will be retired U.S. Army General David Petraeus, appearing by video, but it will be exclusive live video feed with just us. He will focus his comments to the club on the war in Ukraine, potential outcomes, geopolitical and macroeconomic consequences, NATO expansion, etc. A lot of the topics that affect global economics and will be important to each of us in this club. You won't want to miss it. Please watch your email notices for that event. And one more item, we're going to have another new member, prospective new member reception for trustees and board members and their guests on Tuesday, September 13 at the Governor's Club. You may recall that we held one of these in January. It was very successful. So the board of directors said, let's do it again. So that will be September the 13th. The speaker at the reception, and I saw him here today, will be Steve Evans, local entrepreneur and businessman. Thank you, Steve, for being there in the future. I'd now like to recognize and thank our trustee members. If you're not aware of it, the trustee members provide additional financial support for the club each year. In turn, our trustees receive exclusive benefits such as meeting and interacting with our speakers. And also they have other events during the year, and we are indebted to them. If you're a trustee, we thank you very much. And I ask you to stand for a moment so we can recognize the trustees. Thank you. If you'd like to become a trustee member, please see me or any of the board members after the meeting. I'd now like to introduce our guests today. Welcome to all the guests. We have quite a few today. Please hold your applause until we've introduced all the guests. I call on Marion Hoffman, the vice president, because she has a lot of guests today and they're very important to us. Marion?
Thank you. It's a big pleasure to have my husband, former house members, a lot of Hoffman, my son, Travis Hoffman, who's with Ryan Meridian Bank, my dear friend, Fran Shaw, and her beautiful daughter, Carol Francis, who's at McClay, Desert Manson, and the Brodies, Jim and Dee Dee Brody. Jim's a former house member, retired from Veterans Affairs. Thank you.
Thank you. When I introduce Mr. Soul in a few minutes, he will talk about the indelible group that is here. We have quite a few of them with us too, but did any members bring guests with them? Let's go around the room and introduce any guests. Any guests over here? Yes.
My wife, Nina, I cannot be is not here, but I am her guest.
Thank you. Thank you, Curtis.
They are Coach Tim Curtis.
Thank you. Thank you.
I brought Dr. Kimberly Moore.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Great, thank you. Yeah.
And I have county commissioner duly appointed, Governor Ron Sanders, Gadsden County, Jim Moore.
Thank you. Jenny?
On the ballot in November for the state representative House District 8. So, and we can department because they are.
Excellent. Anybody else? Ray? Excellent. Yeah. Doug?
My name is Doug Miller. My guest today is Laura Develop, Deputy Secretary of Commerce and with Enterprise School.
Excellent. And
My name is Spencer Hines, he's the commercial bank of Gadsden Bank.
and excellent. And I saw Josie Tomeo here. I'd like to introduce her, the CEO of Volunteer Florida. Anyone else? Did I miss anyone? Dom?
Well, Kathleen Hampton is the friend, is just today, welcome Kathleen, with Make-A-Wish Foundation.
We welcome our guests because usually they become members. So please know there's an application on the website, or you can see any of us afterwards. Yes, sir. Excellent, thank you. Any others? Okay, thank you all. You may recall the club accepts luncheon sponsors. We have a sponsor today, and it's an honor for me to introduce the sponsor. Our special sponsor, Indelible Business Solutions, and in their representative, I'll call him, is Jamal Soul. Allow me to introduce him. He has an impressive background. Before joining Indelible, Jamal Allen Soul served the state of Florida as the Secretary of Commerce and Chief Executive Officer of Enterprise Florida, the state of Florida's principal economic development organization. Prior to becoming Secretary of Commerce, he served as a Chief of Staff for the Port of Tampa Bay, Florida's largest port by acreage and the key economic engine, as you know, in the Tampa Bay region. Jamal was born in Orlando, Florida, near my birthplace, into a family with a deep tradition of military service. His grandfather fought in World War II. His father served in Vietnam and his brother deployed to Iraq. Jamal's father became one of Florida's first 100 African-American attorneys. His family is impressive. Jamal attended the University of Florida, becoming student body president, and Bill Gators, and he was a member of the University Board of Trustees. He received his bachelor's degree in religion at the University of Florida, and he was awarded the UF Outstanding Male Leader Award, inducted into the UF Hall of Fame, and received the UF Outstanding Young Alumni Award. From there, he obtained a Master's of Higher Education Administration and Policy, a lot of words there, from the University of Massachusetts Amherst, following which he earned his law degree from Indiana University Bloomington Maurer School of Law. He enlisted in the Marine Corps as a private first class, later becoming commissioned and finished as a captain. He served in Operation Enduring Freedom in 2010, and he continues to serve in the U.S. Naval Reserve. Thank you for your service, and thank you for your family's service, sir. He'll be providing greetings from Indelible and introduce the Indelible team with us today, and then introduce our speaker, Freddie Figgers. Jamal? Oh, you came around behind me.
All right, so all of my background, I really credit my parents. My parents are from the backwoods of Florida, and I'll tie that to Freddie's background. My dad's from Hamilton County, Florida, for those who know where that is. And my mom's family came from Tuac, Florida, in Jackson County, but she was raised in Leesburg. So I said that to say that don't despise humble beginnings. And being back in Tallahassee now is an honor for me, because I was here as a member of this club when I was the Secretary of Commerce for the state of Florida. Now I'm in Orlando, but the organization of Indelible is something I'll talk about in a second. But in my role as the Commerce Secretary, I work with great people at Enterprise Florida who are here today, Terry McCaffrey, Katie, and others. And obviously, Laura DeBella is here now. Great friends of mine who I've known for years. I see Doug from the Ports Council, who was the Ports Council. But I always say, watch how you treat people, because the people who you work with 20 years ago, 50 years ago, it all comes back full circle. I was a student at UF when I met Marion Hoffman, Cindy O'Connell, back when I had hair. And a part of that was that the respect that I had for them really carried this stuff a long way. When I ran for student body president, my first campaign check came from Dave Micah. And he got criticized for that because he was the president of the UF Alumni Association. And like, what are you doing involved in politics? But I guess he believed in me, and I always appreciated that years later. So for me, the impressions that you make as a role model really carried me in my career up to Tallahassee, because when I didn't know what to do, I just said, just act like Marion, act like, I'm serious, but act like Dave Micah, be respectful to people, take every meeting, be positive, don't cause drama, don't have controversy, and people will see that in your character every single day with everything that you do. So with the Economic Club of Florida, it's amazing because the history here, the knowledge of people such as Attorney Deanne Smith, others who have really laid the path for me, Dominic Calabro, and those who really care about the state of Florida in a nonpartisan way, because we're here not to advance any political agenda, but to advance the cause of business in the state of Florida at a time when you may not always hear about it in a campaign season. So now in my role at Indelible Business Solutions, where I provide growth to the private sector practice, Indelible is one of the fastest growing management consulting firms in Florida. And in my role, I specialize in tax and audit, risk management, regulatory compliance, and strategic development. But it was founded by a fellow named Michael White, who's here today, who's a CPA from Sarasota. And he had a vision. And the reason why I was connected to him, and growing up, my major was in religion in college. So I wanted to be a pastor. So we would visit churches. I know churches in Florida like the back of my hand. So I used to visit his church when I was 12, 13 years old, many years ago. So a person from his church called me, was like, Jamal, take this call. And I'm really busy in the role here in Tallahassee, but I took the call and we made the connection years later, now working with him. But as a CPA, he had a vision to grow a company in the state of Florida and done great work around the state and now in the nation. So with Michael, he hired a great team of Dr. Shamilio Roberson, who comes from the backwoods of Madison County and is proud of it. She was all around TV when the COVID response happened with the governor of Florida in her role as the Deputy Secretary of Health. And also Aboye Jinkiri, amazing mind, intellectual who serves as the Chief of Staff, with a background from living in Pennsylvania to the Midwest to the South, and now in business and now with Indelible. We have an amazing team. And also with Chris Wade here, who came from EY, did work with the state. So when you hire great people, they will bring success because of their integrity, because of their background, because of their past efforts. So whenever you ask somebody how they'll do in a role, just look what they did in the past, because it tends to repeat itself. So when I stepped down from my state role, a few months prior, I met a young woman who was a teacher at Rickards High School from Chicago. I said, let's get married. That's exactly what I did. We were dating and, I was always professional, but I never focused on my personal. And having two parents who have now passed, that was the best choice I ever made. We made a long list of 700 people, but all of a sudden I said, let's just elope, because there's going to be somebody who doesn't get invited who gets mad. And now nobody can get mad because it was just us at the wedding. Best choice ever. And she is taught at Rickards for years. But with that being said, that all ties to the reason why we're here today with our speaker, Freddie Figgers. I first heard about Freddie through Pastor Greg James. It was the MLK celebration, January 19, and he was talking about Freddie Figgers. I'm like, who is this fellow Freddie? Then I was at an event in Manatee County, and I just brought him up, and my buddy said, oh, Freddie's here right now in town. So with all of that, with Florida being so interconnected, with the history of Florida, my cousin back there is Gallup Franklin, who's a pharmacist who was famous student body president. So with having a big family, I started to meet people. And again, that goes back to watching how you treat people, because you never know who knows who. You never know who was married to who. I learned in Tallahassee, you always take every meeting because you don't know whose ex-husband was who went to McClay with somebody, Leon High School, and then you just don't know. So that part of my success was because I took the lessons of leadership from Marion, from Dave Micah, from Steve Evans, from others about how to interact with those who you may have just met. So with Freddie and his background, being an innovator, being from Gadsden County, it makes me proud, because in Florida nowadays, you'll hear people from Jacksonville and Tampa and Orlando, Miami, but you never hear the stories of old Florida, the stories of old Florida with the pork chop gang, the stories of old Florida that people are forgetting sometimes because of the constant great influx of people from out of state that we have. But Freddie is the quintessential old Florida. But however, with all of his success, with all of his accolades in the tech world, and his story is so unique, he has never forgotten old Florida. So as we progress with our state growing, now the third largest state in the nation, as we see young leaders like Travis back there, who's now a banker, who I've known since he was 3 years old, wearing Gator outfits at the games. But now with that talent staying here is so important. And Freddie is a part of that talent who will stay here and who will bring jobs here. So with this video that will start, and with Marion introducing Freddie and having a fireside chat, just don't forget about old Florida. Don't forget about those kids who don't have opportunity in the rural areas. Don't forget about the urban areas where people may not think about the south side of Tallahassee, but those are going to be the leaders of tomorrow who may be your future speakers. Thank you.
I was admitted first, and I was adopted for 2 days, and I did it by 2 level there. I got my first computer at the age of 9. It was non-functional at the time. I tinkered with it for about 5 or 6 times at home. Operate. What were the games? For being healthcare, that's all my father was getting. It was to the point where we were giving college payments, so all of them. That gave me the idea of building a shoe for me. The shoe had capability of GPS tracking and also a 2-way communication. So I would actually say that and talk to the shoe, he would say 2 words, and we enter it, notify this location. At age 12, I got my first job. That question, I was on the computer technician there. When I was 15 years old, I started my first cloud computing service. In Dothan, Alabama, a tornado hit insurance office and a car dealership. The car dealership didn't have any of their customers' information on file. So they gave me a witty idea to start a cloud computer service, which allowed them to back up all of their information on our remote server in my backyard. Not how we David can say. I quit school because I got classes for maybe 2 or 3 weeks. I got a job offer to build a computer program. It took me 4 weeks to build for $80,000. With that investment, I started ideas, got the resources, started Figg communication at an early stage. We're probably in the world of time. And we're the only minority-owned telecommunications company in the US. One thing that makes us very unique, we manufacture our own handheld. The Figg Health too has a built-in wireless blood glucose meter. So when you check your blood sugar, it sends that result of influence through your phone, share it with your local relative, that with your provider, your doctor, with your insurance agent. And also has a built-in mechanism that prevents excessive drive. When the other two of the motion and mile out, they automatically put instrument in the data in the application. I currently own 4 utility patents and 2 design patents in telecommunications. Believe in what you do. Don't let anyone talk down on you. People will not see your vision. People will not believe in you, but just believe in yourself and keep going.
Freddie, I was so excited you were going to be here today that I couldn't sleep last night because you honestly, we've been looking forward to this for 6 months. And how many of you have been to an economic club where you were given party favors? Because I hope you saw the bags. And I want you to start by telling us what is in each Figgers bag.
Absolutely. So can everyone hear me? Okay. So in each Figgers bag, you have an AI speaker, that artificial intelligence, similar to your Amazon Alexa. So you can say, hey, Figgers, order me a pizza, or hey, Figgers, what time is it? Once it's paired with your cell phone, it learns your traffic routes, gives you the day-to-day analytics, wireless supercharger, IPS69, which is fully waterproof, Bluetooth speaker, and alarm clock. Also, we have here is our Figgers earbuds that have active noise cancellation and in noise cancellation, Bluetooth 5.0, and over 30 hours of battery charge, completely wireless. All of our products are IPS69.
So I really appreciated that he shipped those up, and we're so proud you're a Florida company.
Yes.
Tell us about where you are located now and why you picked Florida.
So first, I was born and raised in Florida, so I didn't want to go anywhere. My company is located in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Our manufacturing facility is located in Doral, Florida, and our healthcare company is located in Bradenton, Florida. And I reside in Parkland, Florida, but originally born and raised in Gadsden County in Quincy, Florida.
And I know you're involved in many boards. And if you look at the PowerPoint, he is a proud member of Enterprise Florida with the Enterprise Florida team here. What are some of the, and also Tax Watch, I failed to mention that.
Yeah.
What are some of the goals you have for your company going forward, and how large are you right now?
So right now, we are the only and largest minority-owned telecommunications company. We not only the largest, but we manufacture our own devices. So consumer electronics such as cell phones, earbuds, speakers, television, healthcare devices, and also provide the service as well. But we're looking to take our company and expand out. Currently, right now, we're participating in multiple broadband projects across the country to expand out into rural areas to provide those last mile connectivity.
Okay, very good. And this is my favorite part about Freddie's story. So we're going to dive into it a little bit. I know you heard some of it through Jamal, and you also heard from the video, but I want you to start at the beginning, if you would, because we're proud you are a product of Gadsden County. So if you would you walk us through it? And then I'm going to refer to this and ask you about the shoe.
Absolutely. So that man you see in the picture right there is the man that saved my life. That was my father. So I was abandoned at birth. I was a John Doe for 2 years, and I was adopted at 2 weeks old. And he took me in and raised me as his own. My father was 68. My mother was 54, and gave me the last name Figgers. And that beautiful lady over there is my wife, Natalie Figgers, my daughter Rose, and my son Laurent.
What were some of the lessons your parents taught you as you grew up? Because obviously they were incredible parents. They had already raised kids of their own, and then they brought you in their family.
Just, staying grounded. That was the best thing my father ever taught me. I mean, my father didn't have technically a formal education, but the wisdom that he had. I mean, every life situation I could go talk to him, and he'll say, well, Fred, you need to do this. Fred, you need to do that. So just really being impactful, never forget who you are, don't forget where you come from, and always paying it forward. If you can help somebody else, you do it without hesitating.
That's right. Now let's talk a little bit about your middle school years, because I know when you and I have visited before, middle school can be tough on kids.
Yes.
And sometimes there's a little bit of bullying. So what happened to you when you were in middle school?
So when I was in middle school, as you know, Quincy is a very small town, so everyone knows everyone. And a lot of kids used to bully me from my neighborhood, and also just around. So they labeled me as a trash can baby. Sometimes, during lunch, you would have kids to pick you up, put you in the trash can, and push you down in the trash can. So that was very difficult, going to, during those times.
But you turned it into a positive story. And tell us about how your dad took you to Goodwill and found the first computer.
And just to elaborate on that a little bit, some of the same bullies, I actually hired them. So
I love that. Some of the bullies I now hired. Some of the bullies work for him. So talk about going to the Goodwill with your dad.
So my father took me to Goodwill on Appalachian Parkway. I think it still exists today. And so we went in the back. I was always fascinated with technology, but growing up in a very impoverished environment, my father, he couldn't afford to get that Gateway computer, because I love Gateway because of the branding that they had, the cow colors, and it just was just something that just stood out. And so we went to Goodwill, and my father purchased me an all-in-one 1989 Macintosh, completely non-functional. The customer service advisor told us that, hey, this computer doesn't work. We really don't want to sell it to you, but I just persisted, said, Daddy, can we have it? And my father bought that computer for $23, and I still have that computer till today.
Wow. And it was through that experience of learning about the computer, and walk us through by the age of 14 and 15. And by this time, your dad's health was declining.
Right. And so, going back to the computer, just a little bit. So when we got that computer and took it home, when we opened it up, I noticed that some of the capacitors were burst open. So being a little tinker, I ran around the house, grabbing my father's alarm clock, his VCR, his cassette player, and he was a maintenance worker here at Florida State University. So he had a big belt buckle that had a soldering gun. So I would solder parts off of the alarm clock and VCR and replace it into the computer, and got it to working.
And so what he just indicated is Freddie is a non-traditional education path. And I want you to talk about that, because here we're at Florida State and a lot of people are supportive of higher ed. We all are, but talk about how it worked for you and what your thinking is on that.
So for me, it was a blessing, because I just fell in love with technology, and that was my passion. So anything I would touch in computers, printers, networking equipment, it's like I just grasped right to it and started just building things out. So the traditional route of going to get a formal education was something that I just wanted to go directly into the private sector.
And I have heard you say that you started taking classes and then you realized you knew more than the people
Yeah.
teaching classes. So.
Yeah.
Okay. I want you to talk about the shoe. The shoe, means a lot to Freddie. And I asked him to bring it all the way up from Parkland because the story is amazing. So over to you about the shoe.
Right. So my father, if you look at his age and disposition, when you adopt someone, first off, he was 68 years old. So he's thinking about grandkids and great grandchildren, not adopting a newborn baby. That was a John Doe. So my father started developing severe dementia, Alzheimer's. So it got to the point where, middle of the night, he would watch a television show called Gunsmoke. And he would wake up 3 o'clock in the morning and have a 30-30 rifle standing over me telling me, Fittler, get out of town. And so, 5 a.m. he would wake up and he would just go wandering. He would just unlock the door, leave the house completely naked, but he would always have his shoes on. And being a little tinker, innovative with technology, I had to figure out something to save my father's life. The family wanted to put him in a nursing home. I totally, disagreed and noticed that every time he wondered, every time I call 911, it literally like 7 a.m., 8 a.m., I call 911. They were like, hey, Freddie, we're already looking for him because they already knew because every day he would wonder.
And this was a precursor to Life Alert, right? It's a
Yes.
precursor in technology.
And so noticing that he had his shoes on, I built a chipset, put into the sole of his shoe. I integrated that with a WAN card and a 3G GPRS. Also integrated the soldered board at the very top of it with a microphone, and in the back of it here is a speaker. And I built an application on my Windows ME computer. And so I tied that in. And so I had an API connected. So I could press a button and say, hey, Dad, where are you? I would come in as a loudspeaker on his shoe and just say anything. And he says something, I would then get his keys to his Lincoln Town car and go pick him up and come back home.
And it is a bittersweet story.
Yes.
Because out of the shoe, it was the first time he was able to commercialize his success. And I want you to talk about that, but I also want you to talk about how money is just a tool and you
Right.
can't bring it with you. I hear you say that many times.
Yes. So it was a good friend of mine at Tallahassee Memorial Hospital that advised me on this technology. Once I showed him like the shoe and he was like, it's a shoe that does this? I was like, yeah. So we went right down there on Miccosukee and he tested it and he was like, I got somebody I want you to meet. So it was a gentleman from Nashville, Tennessee that came and looked at the shoe and ended up acquiring it. And that became the precursors of Life Alert. So when I say money is nothing but a tool, you can't take it with you. When I sold this invention, I had negative $700 in my account. And I get a phone call from a 431 number. And I kept looking at the number. I'm like, I'm not going to answer. And I'm not going to answer. And so when I finally did answer it, it was one of the physicians at the hospital that told me my father had passed away. And literally within that hour, I had a wire transfer that came in for a few $1 million. And
At age 17, a few $1 million.
and
Wow.
it really, it wasn't, my father just wanted a F-150 and a 14-foot bass tracker. And so when I had the opportunity to finally purchase it for him, that's when he transitioned. So when I look at it, I meet so many wealthy individuals across this country every day. And I really practice what I preach. I tell them to pay it forward because you can't take it with you.
That's exactly right. So exactly. So now Freddie builds a business and becomes an inventor. I want you to talk about that. Have you ever thought about having your company go public and talk about your goals for the future?
Right. So taking the company public is something that I wasn't interested in, even though I've had a ton of investors that always came to us and asked to start that initial public offering. I've been blessed to build a very successful company. Never took a penny from an investor. Always built the programs ourselves. and expand it out.
Are you getting involved with all of the rural broadband discussions?
Right. So on the philanthropic side, it was funny because we've already brought broadband to over 54,000 homes across the country. So now we're doing that on the corporation side to expand out the last mile and create those cross connections in those rural areas.
Okay, very good. And now I want to go to the next slide and get to the really good part, and that's about his philanthropy. He's an amazingly generous man. More than 20% of company profits are invested in philanthropy. And I wanted to talk about how you and Natalie, and I know your wife wasn't able to join you today, but how as a team, you are philanthropists.
Right. So we've done so much across the world. Some of the things that we've done is helping with GAP scholarships. We've been able to impact over 7,000 students with GAP funding. We have 3 schools in Africa, over 600 students. During COVID, we donated over 2 million of PPE, even took a 737 over to Germany to pick up the N95 masks and brought them back here to Florida. We just recently endowed Florida Memorial University on their aviation program. Initial total endowment is $1 million to help expand out and create pilots because of the pilot shortage right now. And you know, just doing a lot on the cancer research and Alzheimer's for Alzheimer's Association of America. We power their brain buffs that go out into the rural community and provide services to patients with dementia, Alzheimer's.
And tell us about your dear wife and how someone reached out to her recently.
Yes.
And if you would share that story with us.
Yes. So it was a gentleman that reached out in our foundation, and he asked. Some of those inquiries never come up to the chain, and this one right here made it up. And it was a gentleman that requested $500 on a support to keep his story going about he was wrongfully incarcerated. And so my wife, she took a look at it because she's an attorney, and she doesn't even practice criminal law. She practiced business. And when she took a look at it, she said, hey, I got to get involved in this. So for the first time in Miami-Dade history, she was a man that served 33 years in prison, was wrongfully convicted, was fully exonerated.
All because of Natalie Figgers. That's really careful. So what are you most proud of? Because you're an inventor, you're a businessman, you're a philanthropist, but of all of those accomplishments, what gets you up in the morning excited?
To be able to impact lives, to be able to employ, give opportunities to people, and really make a difference. That's what motivates me.
And I could just talk to him forever, but I want you all to have the ability to ask him some questions. He is an amazing, amazing friend and leader. And with that, I am going to, Mr. President, would you like to moderate some Q&A? Because I know this club has good questions for Mr. Figgers.
So we have a microphone, and you'll see Lisette here with it. She might bring it to you, but everybody with questions, please ask away. Members only at first, please.
Good afternoon. What an amazing story. I'm curious if you could go back and give say you're 15 years old, what would be the one thing you'd want to go back and tell yourself that you know now that you didn't know then?
It comes back from a Bible scripture, but do not cast your pearl with swine. So that was something that I would really look at, just advise myself on some of the young money mistakes I've made.
And he also is fond of saying, to whom much is given,
Yes.
much is expected. I love that.
Any other questions? Dave?
Freddie, thanks for being with us. So the telecom space is moving very rapidly. And I'd be interested in your company's kind of outlook in that arena of like product development. And then also, what's it like to try to manufacture in the United States? And do you do that exclusively, or are you Or do you have to get some products developed abroad? And one of my big concerns is China these days and in that whole arena.
So our products are manufactured in Doral, but if we have to export and build our products overseas, we always go dark with our technology. So we have them to physically assemble our components. And once we receive the components, we install the applications ourselves. Now, the supply chain, that is a entirely different beast right there. The entire world, relied on one chipset manufacturer. So hopefully the United States can take lead and we can start manufacturing our chipset components here.
And I'm going to draw up the last slide because I want you to talk about your mission.
Yeah. What do you tell your children about higher education and your goals for them?
Right. So my children, they're infants. So we haven't got to that stage yet, but I want them to go to college. I want them to expand and learn and live. For me, it was my circumstances was a little bit different. So I didn't have that formal opportunity to go, but it was a blessing that, I was able to build what we've accomplished to build.
We do have more time, so if there are more questions, please step forward.
Yeah, I
Curtis.
don't have a question, but I wanted to add something to Freddie's life path. While working as a school psychologist in the Gadsden School District, I met a young man in middle school, Freddie Figgers. And Freddie came to me, and Freddie, you may have a better recollection of how we met and why he came to me. Yeah. But he asked me to help him fill out an application and help him get a job with Net Quincy. And that was his very first job in Gadsden County.
Yes, sir.
I knew he was a prodigy then, and so it was an easy ask for me. And so we've stayed in touch over the years. And when my wife told me that he was the speaker for today, I told her I had to be here. Even though she couldn't make it, I said, your guest has got to go. And I'm so proud of Freddie and where he has come from and what he's doing with what he's been able to accomplish. So thank you all for that. And Freddie, thank you for all that you've done.
And just to elaborate on, you were state representative and I was repairing literally about 200 computers a week. And so when Net Quincy position came, I went to Representative Richardson and asked him, hey, can you help me with this job application? And he did. So thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Freddie, and welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you so much. And thank you for what you and your wife do really in not only Florida, but throughout the nation. And thanks for your great service. What would you say are the top 3 or 4 characteristics you look for when you bring someone on your team and why they're so important?
First off, dedication, integrity, honesty. Those are the main characteristics that we look for in the company, and to really look at, where does that person actually fit in? There's always room, but really just finding what's their strong points and their weak points.
Questions? Cindy?
Freddie, so glad you're here. In terms of the horizon and your future, what does the international business platform look like for you in the future, working with other undeveloped countries, et cetera? What does the future look for you in the international front?
So right now we're doing a lot in Kenya. We're manufacturing for a telecommunications company there and helping expand out in their 5G called Safaricom. So we're manufacturing their customer premises equipment and also some lower model affordable handsets.
Did you say Kenya?
Kenya.
Wow, very impressive. Very impressive. Any other questions? Because yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Dr. Robertson. I'm from Greenville, Florida, a small town in North Florida. So I was recently talking to some of the members of the school board and different people there, and there's still a huge problem in that area and less than a 40% high school graduation rate in my hometown. And they have a lot of problems with technology. So just wondering, what are you doing in rural areas and what can be done? What are some of the recommendations to bridge that gap?
Right. So recently what we did in Gadsden County is attempted to distribute over 25,000 hotspots to students that did not have internet access. And we built those hotspots with SIPA compliance. So they were only able to access educational programs through the academic blackboard. So expanding that out as well is something that we're looking to really just build upon.
Yes, sir.
Yes, recently I saw where Apple was looking at India. In fact, they made a commitment to have their products being made in India. Have you looked at India at all?
No, not India. No, not at all. So Apple uses a company called Foxconn, which had a lot of negative publicity for slave labor. So India is not something that we're looking at currently. Right now, we're able to manufacture in Doral unless we have a massive order that we have to export overseas. But when we do have to have those type of orders, we just have all of the components shipped over, assembled, and then once they're shipped back, we install our applications on them, because there's no type of intellectual property laws in China, so you're not protected in one bit.
I am so excited to speak with you today. I'm a huge tech nerd. I was wondering if you anticipate an intersection between your company, telecommunications, and the metaverse, and where you see that going, especially in the augmented reality space.
So in the augmented reality space, we're actually working on something right now that's pretty cool. So that's we're negotiating with well, not technically Facebook anymore, it's Meta, that we're putting some things together.
Some things.
So, some things I can't really talk about right now, but yes.
So I'll ask a question. So is it true, Freddie, that when you first developed the shoe and your first customers were parents that were looking for teenagers? Is that true? So, just a joke question. Yes, sir.
From the metaverse perspective, have you found any difficulties developing cross-chain? Do you have you seen any preferences towards Ethereum, Solana, Cardano, or some of the more niche like gaming spheres like Sandbox, where you find that the development's easier?
So I think that the development API portal for those sandbox are a little bit different, but that's something that we're not currently exploring right now, but in the future we may.
Sir.
Mr. Figgers, could you speak to some of the work that you're doing with underrepresented populations in the healthcare arena?
Yes, so currently we have a electronic medical record system that we primarily focus around federally qualified health centers. When you look at the FQHC, their majority of their patients are underserved in minority communities, and their electronic medical records, there's some of them are still on spreadsheets. So our EMR focused primarily on uninsured, giving the best solution. And currently we serve a little bit over 800,000 members.
This is great. Other questions? Yes, sir.
On that same topic, I worked with the Agency for Healthcare Administration here in Florida with a program for promoting interoperability for the electronic health record technologies. And I noticed something from the environmental scan that we saw. There was a rise in adoption of electronic health record technologies, but not necessarily the interoperability to communicate between electronic health record technologies. Do you see that being remedied over the next 5 years, or are there any solutions that you have seen in the pipeline to really start connecting them so that larger hospital networks are more easily able to communicate with FQHCs or RHCs? Thank you.
So that's a great question, because that's a big problem that's going on right now in South Florida with a company called Cerner and Epic, with their interoperability not able to connect to each other. So what we did with our EMR is built everything around NFC, and we also have Bluetooth 5.0. So they're able to connect to those hardware peripheral devices. Like, for example, our remote patient monitoring system for patients with congestive heart failure, or diabetes. So as soon as you check your blood sugar, instantly share the results to your cell phone. And also it can monitor your heart rate, 24 hours a day. So our technology is focused primarily on the NFC, also 4G LTE and Bluetooth technology for Bluetooth 5.0 with those hardware. But any antiquated devices, that's a challenge right now of different EMRs upgrading their systems.
And Freddie, you had mentioned something to me about the announcements you wanted to make about the club.
Oh, I've had so much fun here. I want to become a member.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Did you want to wrap up with Freddie?
I just want to say thank you for your attention. And I really liked having a lot of questions from the audience because it's all about you all. And so thank you for coming today to honor this very special leader. And over to Lo.
Thank you. Freddie? So I tell you in advance, this is 2 peaks, so we don't drop it. On behalf of the Economic Club of Florida, we are thrilled that you were here today to present. We want to present you with this vase and base in memory of you being here, has your name engraved and the date, and thank you for becoming a member. Thank you. Remember, next month, General Petraeus, we're adjourned. Thank you.